Hello, this is Melinda with YogaUOnline, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here today with yoga therapist and registered children's yoga teacher, Shawnee Thornton Hardy. Shawnee is the founder of Asanas for Autism and Special Needs and the founder-director of Yoga Therapy for Youth Certification Program. She has over 20 years of work with neurodiverse children, including children with autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, sensory processing deficits, as well as severe behavioral problems. Shawnee, I want to begin by asking you about what we're seeing with the rising rates of autism in the country today, and the degree to which the rates have risen is someone considers striking. Can you talk about this and give us some insight into why we might be seeing such an increase?
Yeah, so I usually answer this question often the same way. We have seen a significant rise in the rates of autism. In fact, currently, the number that they're talking about is about 1 in 40 children in the U.S. are currently being diagnosed with autism. And there are a lot of theories behind why there's such a rise in the rate of autism. There's lots of theories about the environment, and there's a lot of controversy with immunizations and different factors. And I'm not really going to address or go into that because we really don't know. We don't know 100% the reason for the rise in the rate of autism. But one thing that I can say, speaking from someone who's been in this field for over 20 years now, is that I think that we have a lot more awareness. We have a lot more understanding about autism. And when I first was working with children back in the day, I was a preschool assistant, and there was a young boy in my program. He was my first teacher, actually, that brought me onto this path. Who had all the characteristics of autism, but at the time they really didn't have an understanding about autism. So I think we have a lot more understanding. We understand neurodiversity a lot more. We have a lot more individuals with autism who are actually sharing information with us and giving us an insight and perspective. So without knowing the direct cause, I can't really comment on that, but I do know that we have a lot more awareness. The world is much more aware of autism now. There was a time where no one had an understanding, and those children were really not being given a lot of supports, and so we're seeing a big shift and change in that.
Yeah, you talk about awareness, and I think research is, we've increased our awareness, and we're also acknowledging how key awareness is in terms of providing support for these individuals. And one thing that people often talk about is how key early intervention is in providing these kids with the support they need. How do you see yoga fitting into that?
Yeah. So early intervention is incredibly important, I think, just in general with all children, that we are giving them the supports that they need for success and for being able to navigate the world in a successful way. So with early intervention, I think yoga, even when we think about what a wonderful practice yoga can be for children, and fortunately there's a lot more research that's coming out on the benefits of yoga and mindfulness for children and youth, is that what we want to cultivate for our children as young and at an age as possible is being more in tune to their bodies, being more connected to their bodies, having more of a sense of self-awareness, learning strategies and tools to help to manage the stresses of life, because we know life is stressful and we can't take away all the stresses from our children. So we want to offer these self-coping, self-regulation tools to children as early as possible. And in specifically children with autism and ADHD, because they do tend to have a lot of challenges that they face, so which can cause heightened levels of anxiety and frustration. So we want to give them these tools to be able to navigate the world and to face these challenges that we know they're going to face throughout their lives. There's not a cure for autism, there's not a cure for ADHD, but if we can provide them with these tools early on to be able to navigate their challenges, then I think that they can have a lot more success and feel a lot more comfortable in navigating and moving through the world.
That makes sense. And what are some of the hallmark signs that parents might see or might notice that would be indicators of neurodiversity or special needs in their own children?
Yeah, so that's a a broad question, and I like to answer that lightly, because I think one thing that as we do as parents is we have a lot of fear around our children struggling. And one thing that's important to think about is that neurodiversity it encompasses all of us. We're all neurodiverse. Every one of us learns in a different way. We take in information differently. Our sensory processing systems are different. Some children are focusing on their gross motor development, and so they don't learn to talk until much later. Some children are talking very early, and they don't learn to walk until much later. So one thing that's really important for us to think about is that what we want to first do is recognize that our children are all going to develop in different ways. Now, some of the things that we might pick up on are some of the adverse kind of responses to the environment. Children who are very, very sensitive to their environment. You may see children have meltdowns or tantrums even early on, before they're really able to express and communicate. And so these are children who could be very hypersensitive to the environment, who may have some sensory integration challenges that are happening. Children who are delayed in their speech and language, you just want to keep an eye on that. But I think initially it's important for every parent to think because their child is sensitive to sensory information, or because they have delay in their speech and language, that their child has autism, or if they have difficulty with focus, so that they have ADHD. It's just really important to be in tune, be aware of their development, and then really have those partnerships with their pediatrician, and make sure that they're kind of checking in and sort of seeing where that child is in their development if they have concerns.
Thank you. That's an important reminder. Now, I know you've worked with a lot of different children with a variety of different special needs. Could you talk a little bit about that work that you've done, and also the kinds of effects that you've seen from them having a yoga practice in their lives?
Yeah. So a big majority of my work throughout the years has been in working with children with significant behavior challenges, and so many different unique challenges: autism, ADHD, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy. A lot of children with learning disabilities or challenges with learning. So what I found over the years, and this is really why I do the work that I do, is because my focus and my main work, the focus of my work was in supporting children in developing self-regulation skills. These were children that struggled with being in their community schools and struggled with being in the classroom environment. And unless we have the ability to self-regulate, we don't have the capacity to learn. So we have to address children's nervous systems. We have to address their capacity and ability to self-regulate before we can expect them to learn. And in one of the webinars, I talk about the downstairs brain and the upstairs brain. We have to address children's ability to feel a sense of safety in the world around them before we can expect them to learn. So as I found yoga, and as yoga was so powerful for me, I had a lot of trauma as a child. I had a lot of anxiety growing up and really, really struggled with that. And when I found yoga, it was just a saving grace for me. And I had been working with children for so many years and working as a behavior specialist. And when I started to integrate yoga and breathing and movement with the children, it was incredible, first of all, how they responded to it. They loved it. They just wanted to do it all the time. They asked for it all the time. And I began to integrate it, like I said, in one of the webinars, just frequently throughout the day. It was just an essential part of the day. It was integrated into every aspect of the classroom and learning. And I found that students were more regulated. I found that they were more focused. I found that they were learning a lot of the deeper yogic philosophy about taking care of themselves and taking care of others, and respecting themselves and loving themselves. And I think one of the things that I find to be the most important thing is that yoga is about self-acceptance. It's about being who you are with however your brain functions or however your body functions, and feeling valued as a person, and feeling that you have purpose in the world. And so, I really saw that impacted the kids in that way. And, that's really been my driving force with sharing this work.
And as you're saying, that's something that's not just for the kids we label as special needs. That's something that can benefit really all children, or as you were talking about in your own case, children with trauma.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trauma is a big one. So, and we're learning more and more that, children's relationships or their early relationships or attachment relationships can really impact the development of their brain. So many of the children I worked with, their learning was greatly impacted by severe trauma that they experienced early on in their lives. And so talk about being in that fight, flight, or freeze and being in that survival mode because they had to be in that survival mode. So, and really, in my opinion, these children with autism, children with ADHD, children who are hypersensitive to the world around them, they're experiencing their own sense of trauma. Children who are in bodies that maybe can't move in the way that they want them to. There's a level of trauma that all these children have experienced. So keeping that in mind and recognizing the importance of creating a safe environment for them and helping them learn about how to feel safe in their own bodies and feel safe in the world around them.
And you've seen yoga able to provide that sense of safety and that sense of security to them. Could you talk a little bit about the way in which it does that for them?
Yeah, I think the first thing is getting children to be in tune to their bodies and having a sense of self-awareness and really learning about their bodies and understanding that, how our brains work and what is anxiety and what's happening in our bodies when these emotions are arising, and making it not so scary or making it not a bad thing to have emotions. I think this is important for us to help kids to understand is that we all feel anger, we all feel anxiety, we all feel sadness, we all feel frustration. These are emotions that we all feel and that we need to normalize them and help children to understand that it's okay to feel those emotions. But we want to learn tools to help them be able to express those emotions differently and to feel a sense of safety in experiencing emotion. I think that's a major key is can we feel emotion and still feel safe to express that, which I think is really important. And I think what my main role in helping children to feel a sense of safety was creating a safe environment for them and really helping children to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel loved, to feel valued. And then when we teach them these self-regulation tools, we know that our social engagement system is more online when we're in that place of feeling more calm, more relaxed, more in that parasympathetic state. So when we can get children to be in that state, then they are more engaged with the world and they can develop more of a sense of safety with the world around them, if that makes sense.
In your work with creating a safe space for kids and helping them to come to a state of more balanced nervous system function, do you also see improvements in health as a result of that?
So I think that's something that would have to kind of be studied and looked at a little bit more in terms of like having actual data as related to improved health. But what I have seen is that when we get children into more of a regulated state, when they're more in that parasympathetic, they're more they rest better. We have to be in parasympathetic in order to rest and to get an ample amount of sleep and to restore the body. And so I think when we give them these tools and these practices, these are lifelong practices. For me, I look at these children and I envision them as adults, and what my passion is to support children in living happy, healthy lives to come. So it's not just in this moment can we give these children these tools, it's can we give them a love of yoga and mindfulness so that they can be healthier individuals as they grow into adults. So we want to support them with their autoimmune conditions, digestive issues, sleep issues. These are all factors that have been a major issue with children that I've worked with over the years. So can we give them some of these tools to be a bit more calm in their nervous system so they can experience better health later on? And we know also we're learning that a key part of our mental and physical health and well-being in the future is social engagement and connection to other people. So we want our kids to be in that place of feeling more calm and more connected to others.
Yes, that makes sense. And in terms of being calm and connected to others, I know that the issue of behavioral challenge is one that comes up frequently when dealing with kids who have special needs. How do you approach that? Is that something that you see yoga helping with as well? What would you say to that?
Yeah. So, I mean, we could do a whole entire webinar on working with challenging behavior and yoga, because this question comes up all the time with so many people, because we have so many children who are dysregulated, and we have a lot of people who don't really, haven't learned the tools to be able to know how to work with children who may have challenging behaviors. One of the things I would go to is to really recognize the importance of providing the supports that I talked about at the beginning. Can we teach children on their level of learning? So can we use the visual tools? Can we use auditory tools? Are we speaking their language? Are there children who are nonverbal that need more visual supports to feel that they're able to effectively express and communicate themselves? Are we supporting and reducing anxiety by giving them visuals that show them what to expect? So these are all things that are really important that I just weave into my teaching. It's just a natural thing, and you'll find that you'll have children that attend so much more and are so much more involved and are exhibiting less behavior just because you've offered the supports that are important for them. And then, there's just a lot of different strategies, and every child is different. So every child is going to be unique in, what the function of their behavior is. So in this last module, I talk about how behind every behavior is a need. And, we have one thing that I think is just really important if you're working with children, and in particular children who have more challenging behaviors, is that you come from a place of compassion, a compassionate lens. And rather than looking at that child and thinking that they're there to just irritate you or to make your life miserable or just to act out just because, is recognizing what is the need. Is there a sensory need? Are they not able to effectively communicate? Do I need to provide some other support that's going to help them feel more of a sense of safety? Do they need to be my helper instead of jumping right in and doing the yoga practice so that they can have an opportunity to see what to expect? So really taking a moment, stepping back and taking a pause, and knowing that we're co-regulators, so we need to also recenter ourselves and be in a place of compassion, because those children are so sensitive and they pick up on our energy. And children will act out if we don't like them. If we have this energy of we're annoyed with them, we're irritated, then that's not going to create that safe environment for them. So it's really important that we also recognize our own regulation and our own lens that we're looking at that child with.
That's beautiful. And that reminds me of something you said earlier in the webinar, where you were talking about how we want to see the child and not just the diagnosis, and to connect to the whole person and not just, some itemized list of needs or symptoms that we're seeing.
Yeah, and this is just so important. And, it is important for us to have an idea of the diagnosis in a sense, because then we can learn the tools and strategies that can help support those children. But once we have an idea of those things, then we sort of toss that aside, and then we engage with that child and we look at them as their own unique individual child, not as a diagnosis, not as a category under a diagnosis. We don't look at them just based on their behavior, but we really try to get to know that child deeper, on a deeper layer. And that every child we come in contact with is beautiful and whole, just the way that they are. So I think that's so important for us to really, really come from that lens, that we're not trying to fix children through the practice of yoga and breathing, that children don't need to be fixed. What we're trying to do is support them. And what I always think about is this inner light that children carry within themselves that's so beautiful. And I think that's why I've been drawn to this work. As a child, I experienced a lot of trauma and a lot of suffering, and I just believe children are these just very, very spiritual beings that have this beautiful light inside. And what our job is to help them shine that light brightly, to help support them in being themselves, but they're already whole, they're already beautiful, they're already perfect just the way that they are. So really important to think about that. We're not coming in and trying to fix children, and that yoga, the practice of yoga, is not about fixing. It's about acceptance and self-love and self-compassion and compassion for others.
That's a really beautiful point. And when you say that, I often think about how we often look to yoga as, oh, can yoga fix this? Does yoga fix back pain? Does yoga fix X, whatever it is? And I think coming into this, a lot of people may be wondering, can yoga provide a solution for certain aspects of my child's special needs? And can you speak a little to that and to what kind of things people can expect from a yoga practice for kids with special needs? How can they be supported?
So we know through even research, although it's not with children and it's not with children with special needs, but research with adults, that the immense benefits that yoga provides on a physiological level in terms of our health and well-being, our mental and emotional and physical health and well-being. So we know there's a lot of research out there that yoga is beneficial, and it helps reduce stress and tension. It helps us to be in more of a place of calm. It supports with our digestive systems and with our immune systems and with our breathing and respiration, and in strengthening the core and strengthening and stabilizing the muscles in the body that support with postural control and motor coordination and movement. So there's wonderful benefits that are going to come from the practice, because we're practicing a physical practice along with breathing. We want to weave in all of the practices of yoga and not just the physical, of course. But we know that movement is so important for children, and I wish that someone taught me how to breathe when I was a child. So I think just teaching children breathing and how to breathe and how to be aware of their breath is just so powerful. We have our breath, it's with us, it's our superpower. That's what I tell kids. It's with you all day, every day. You don't have to pack it in your bag. You can't forget it at home. It's there every moment. And so knowing that when we offer tools for children to support with self-regulation is the key to health and well-being. It impacts our mental, our emotional, our social, and our physical well-being on all layers and all levels. So for parents just to recognize that, it's not a practice to fix something. It's not a practice to cure something. It's a practice to enhance their unique strengths and skills that they already have, and to bring those out and to support with improved health and well-being, and to support our kids with feeling more grounded and connected to the world.
Thank you for that. Yeah. And I know you have a course with us on YogaUOnline, and I, of course, have the privileged insider information about what that course contains, but I was wondering if you could share a little bit with our listeners what they might expect to learn in that course on yoga for kids with special needs.
So the course is titled Yoga for Children with Special Needs, Focus on Autism and ADHD, but I want to clarify that this course is going to be beneficial for anyone who wants to teach yoga to children. And for anyone, even if you're not a yoga teacher, for parents, for anyone who works in the capacity of working with children, what I think is really important for us to recognize is that we are a neurodiverse world, and you're going to work with children who are neurodiverse. So if you are teaching children, in my belief, it's our responsibility to learn everything that we can learn to support every child that we come in contact with. So if you don't work with children with ADHD, or you don't work with children with autism, I'm going to guarantee you that there's going to be a time that those kids are going to come to your yoga class, or they're going to come into your classroom, or you're going to be with them in some capacity. So it's really important that we learn these tools and have an understanding, but also that we recognize that all children are neurodiverse. And one of the things that I talk a lot about in this course is sensory integration and sensory processing. And it's having an understanding that this is something that many children experience, and they're not children who are identified as having special needs. In my opinion, all children have special needs, and I say that over and over and over again, because I think it's really important for us to value every child on the same playing field and recognize that we're all neurodiverse. We all have our own unique needs and challenges. And to know that it's important for us to have an understanding of how to support neurodiversity and how to celebrate it So, to really, really learn these tools and strategies that are going to support all children. So we talk about sensory integration and sensory processing in the course, and also strategies and supports that you can use to support children, neurodiverse children. So children who may need more visual supports or auditory supports or different tactile support. So I give lots of tools and techniques for how you can make the practice more accessible in a sense to children, neurodiverse children, and to how to set them up for success. We also go into talking about a little bit about the polyvagal theory and about the autonomic nervous system, which I think is really important to understand. How does the nervous system work? How does the nervous system respond to unmanaged stress, and how does this impact children and on so many levels? And we also talk about the important self-regulation, so a big focus on self-regulation, understanding what is self-regulation, how do we integrate yoga tools and techniques to support with self-regulation. And then the importance of the core and core strength, which I'm just really, really passionate about this. I'm so passionate about the core and helping people to understand about the importance of this with development and how this impacts our children and their learning and their motor coordination, all of those things. Lots of little ideas for poses and breathing strategies and movement and mantras and those types of things to help you get an idea of some nice tools that you can weave into teaching all children, really, but wonderful tools you can integrate in supporting children with neurodiverse children. So if they come into your yoga class or you're teaching a class, how can we support the needs of all children who want to attend our class, and how can we have a sense of understanding and be in tune to those children?
And having seen inside your course, I can just say how absolutely a wonderful job you have done with taking all these principles of yoga and making them accessible for children with special needs, making them accessible for really all children. So many different strategies, so many different tools, such a fun angle on so many familiar poses and styles of breathing. I just think you've done a wonderful job, and I want to thank you for your work in the course, but also thank you for the work that you're doing in general in your job and in what you're giving to the world.
Thank you so much. This is really my passion. My passion is that all children and adults really feel included and have access to these practices of yoga and mindfulness. And I just believe we can share these practices. We just have to seek out the information and learn these strategies and have an awareness. And I think it's so important for all children to feel included and to have access. So it's my pleasure and honor to share, and I'm grateful every time I get the opportunity to share my heart's work. So thank you so much for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to share.